This interview is part of a continuing series of interviews with former professors, retired professors at Lawrence Technological University's College of Architecture and Design, and we're very pleased today to have as our guest Professor Joe Savin. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to go through and discuss some aspects of your education and career, and both professional career and teaching, but let me just go way back to the beginning. When did you first think about becoming an architect, and what were the forces that were going through your mind that led you in that direction?
About a month before I entered University of Michigan when I was 17. And I wanted to be an English teacher. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I thought it'd be nice to be an English teacher. But then I began thinking about it, and it seemed to me that you have to do something that is kind of deeply analytical or deeply scientific, which would be able, you may make maybe more of a living that way. So, well, excuse somebody at the age of 17. And so I switched from that, and I thought I'd become a mechanical engineer. But then I talked to somebody, and I lived in a milieu where we didn't really know much about what courses to take in college and what being meaningful. So I asked around, and somebody said, well, if you're interested in I told him roads and bridges and things of that sort. He said, well, you might want to be an architect. So this is a person I had great confidence in. So I signed up for architecture. And I can't say a deep meaning for me at that time.
But you never looked back from that decision.
No, it was, as I got into it, it just got better and better and better and better. And it was the best decision I ever made in terms of my career.
And this all really transpired within 1 week, just before you went to school?
Yes, I just switched to into architecture. And I was eminently not favored with training in it, because we proceeded to have courses like pencil drawing, charcoal drawing, watercolor. Back then, architects took those kind of courses. We had life drawing, though I didn't take life drawing, but we had that as one of our options. And this was of interest to me. I like these subjects. They seem to be fine. And then also, I think in the early semesters, we got into architectural history, and that was really terrific. And I realized at that point there's so much to architecture that it was a very lovable occupation.
Did you ever actually get to use English in your study of architecture then? Your interest in English?
Yes, indirectly. My students, I mark up their verbal submissions, not verbal, they're written submissions, and I couldn't stand bad English, and so I was known for marking things up and crossing things out. Most architects are, at least I found, students don't seem to be too interested in English, but of course they should be, and they don't get around to it. But so that was one of the things that it was a holdover from wanting to be an English teacher.
Did you have any, prior to going to architecture school, had you had any experience in high school with art classes or anything like that?
No, and that was terrible, because I went in there And there were a lot of kids in the school that had gone to technical schools and had gone to schools where they learned drafting and art courses and things of that sort. And it was very rough if you'd never been associated with anything of that sort. So now I think students have a better idea what they're getting into than we did.
I know from my own experience attending an architecture school and not having had any high school art preparation going in, certainly in my first semester, probably every other week I thought about saying, well, am I doing the right thing? And, should I be dropping out and going to something that I can actually be good at?
Exactly.
You had those same feelings then.
Yes. Yeah, and also I learned I was good in math.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about that. I just kind of took it for granted. And, but we had a lot of math. I don't think we have as much math now as they used to.
Yeah.
But math is both objectively and subjectively very closely aligned with architectural thinking, and it's very valuable.
Very good. Well, as you moved through college, and you attended Michigan from what years? When did you start there?
1948.
1948.
And
so
I went
just after the Second World War.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and I went straight through.
And what do you remember at Michigan as your most significant experience or two as a student?
Well, I had teachers who had never practiced architecture. They were children of the Depression. They were all mostly from Eastern schools that they transferred to teach here at Michigan. Very academic in their approach, very intelligent, and they were cut above what I would imagine your average teacher would be in most places. Mm-hmm. When they came to Michigan, they felt that they were kind of detached from construction and building, and they taught mostly on a very theoretical level.
And was this a problem for you, or did you see an advantage?
I didn't know it was a problem or an advantage. I could only look at it because this was all fresh to me. Yeah, and now that I look back, I would say that it was both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage because it is nice to deal with people who have experience. And I realized that these people never had a chance to practice. They graduated from very prestigious architectural schools. The Depression came along, and they didn't do much then. And then they got into the Army. Most of them became officers, but they didn't have a chance to further their career there. Mm-hmm. And so they are very intelligent, but not too knowledgeable, and taught through the chaos of architectural philosophy, through all the major teachers and architects that were important at the time.
So out of that environment, where do you think that you got your desire to, or your skills and knowledge to actually engage in practice when you graduated?
I just did it by working at good firms, or a good firm. Cernan was a very good firm. He wasn't a theorist. He built the buildings. A person walked in and gave him a commission. He was offered a commission a day, the secretary said. And he reinvented the wheel on every issue. If he needed a window, he invented a window.
So when did you join Cernan? This is Eero Saarinen.
Yeah, in Well, I had to go in the Army, so about 1955.
Mm-hmm. This
Yeah.
is after you went to the Army.
Yeah.
You came out and joined
Yeah.
Cernan's firm. So what? I mean, here you are, a kid right out of the Army, and you go up to Eero Saarinen, and how did you approach him for a job?
I just asked, do you need any help around here? And what happened, I happened to have very good grades that seemed to make
And a good portfolio?
difference.
A good design portfolio?
I don't, they didn't get into that much.
Really?
They were just seemed to be satisfied with, they just figured if you'll learn if you're, well, they didn't pay you that much. But he did pay. I was astonished. I was told you can't make any money there, but he did pay me $3 an hour.
Well, back in those days, $3 an hour was real money.
Yes, it was fine. And double time for weekends and time and a half. But then that's the part I didn't like, because you become just a cog in a machine. And the people that work there, a lot of the time, as though they wouldn't admit it, they were just keeping up their hours so they would make a little more money, I think.
So at that time, Cernan was certainly one of the most prestigious architects in the United States, if not the world.
Yeah, yes.
And so how was it? What are some of your memorable experiences in working for the Cernan office? And that was in Bloomfield Hills?
Bloomfield Hills, yeah. Memorable because he was a pure, great architect.
Mm.
He wasn't a genius. He was very derivative, actually. But you couldn't call him, he's not a copycat or anything, because he gave his own approach to it. But he studied very carefully what other architects did. And he studied a problem to death. Mm-hmm. If he wanted a staircase, he had one built with the right risers and treads out in the back. Or if he had a format for a new kind of window with rubber gaskets and things, he'd have it built. And when you're dealing with General Motors, back in those days, whatever you want to get, you got, in terms of help in making your decisions. So, and he worked all night, and he was not in the office during the day, totally devoted to architecture, and totally studied it. And so I got the benefits of being in that milieu and running around looking over everybody's shoulders.
So you working in the day? Were you working days?
I worked days, yeah.
So how did you get personal contact with him if he was there at night and you were there during the days?
Well, the only personal contact I ever got with him was when I did something wrong. But that wasn't not the way you think. It was one day I stole a cement block from a Frank Lloyd Wright house that was being built on 6 Mile Road. The blocks had cutouts with glass put into it. You could lose your hands putting the glass in, because it was I don't know how it worked when they got to inserting the glass into the masonry, but I brought a block in, and he walked in to the studio, and he looked around, and he picked this thing out immediately. I brought it in to show people in the office. Look what I stole. So he looked at that, he said, "What's this?" And he had such an eye, he could see across the floor. It was like at a famous idea of being at a ballroom and seeing this beauty, and the heroine is mesmerized. Well, he could just pick things out. He had a marvelous eye. And he said, "Where is this?" And everybody looked at me, and I said, he said, "Where did you get it?" I told him the story, and my reaction was totally different than his. His was, "Oh, how marvelous that you brought this in," and my reaction is, "I got caught stealing."
Well, I'm happy to report to you that the statute of limitations has expired as you make this confession on video.
It was probably the most valuable thing I ever stole.
Well, how long did you work for Cernan?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And was that your finishing school in architecture?
Yes, that was fine. Also, I was much enamored with the work of Mies van der Rohe. And I had a friend who had an office, and he opened an office. He didn't have any work, but I decided that I would leave Cernan's, and what little work we had, we would share and start an office. And so that worked out quite well. We were partners for, about 20 years, something like that. And he had gone to IIT, so that was terrific, because that was a school that Mies van der Rohe was very involved with. And so that was the other half of my education, yeah. So it was, I think I was lucky in picking two good people to use as mentors. Yeah.
So when did you establish your own firm?
About 1958.
58.
Yeah.
So actually, your path to establishing your own practice was fairly quick by today's standards.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I mean, you had Army in there. You had experience with some firms, and all of a sudden, what did you do? You just said, "I'm going to hang up a shingle and start my practice."
Well, my partner Isaac, he had some work with a developer, and a very big developer. And so we had that work, and it wasn't very, some of it was interesting, but a lot of it wasn't very interesting. And so that got us started.
So like many firms, it starts with the job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which brings income in, and then you can form a practice out of that.
Yeah, and then we lost whatever work we had, and we didn't have any work at all. So then I thought that I'd be a good time for Diane, my wife, and I to take a trip to Europe for a couple of months. So we took our trip to Europe, and I came back, and it was worse than when we left. So I was glad I took the trip, because I figured I'd never take this trip if I saw where it was going to. But then we started picking up work, and we got into a lot more work, and the firm took off. The big change was when we won a competition for the design of housing down in Lafayette Park. And then the developers we started doing mid-rise buildings, a few high-rise, and mostly in residential. And then you get your share of people come in who want to build their dream house. And
so most of your experience was in housing?
Housing, commercial.
Small commercial and housing?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was an office where you, because that's distinct from commercial in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Let me take a little step back. You talked about you and your wife decided to go to Europe when work was a little slow.
Yeah.
And I take it that you hadn't traveled extensively before that.
Well, when I was in the Army, oh yeah, I traveled. They didn't send me to Korea; they sent me to Germany.
Oh, you lucked out there.
Oh, I did, and I took advantage of it. I took so much leave, and they didn't keep track of it. When I left, they said to me, the clerk typist, the most powerful man in the Army is the clerk typist, said to me, I'm going to have to dock your pay by the amount of time that you took off extra leave that you weren't entitled to. And that seemed fair enough to me. So, but then he said, Joe, I'll forget about it. He just gave me a clean bill of health, and so I didn't get docked pay.
How important is it for a young architect to travel?
Oh, immensely important. Oh, yeah.
So, since students will be listening to this interview, can you cite a couple of reasons why travel is important when, particularly as you're initiating your career or while you're studying architecture?
Well, because that's our heritage. One epoch builds on another, and travel lets you see many, many different epochs, and you get to see the Greeks, the Romans, the Gothic, Renaissance. They're all terribly important and unique, and they all influence what you can do and how you can do it. So I think that travel is extremely important.
And the pictures in the textbooks just don't do justice to the reality.
No.
What do you think, either as a student or as a young professional, are the most important achievements or outcomes that you should be looking towards?
Work for the best architect you can find, and don't worry about what they pay you. Mm-hmm. When I got the job at Cernan, I didn't even ask what the pay was going to be. Mm-hmm. I just knew that this is to be an opportunity. So I think that was important. And go to a good school, and your education, and working for a good firm is very important.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your time in teaching. When did you gain an interest in teaching, and about when did you start?
Very early. They asked me to teach at Michigan, and I taught 3 afternoons a week, and those were the gravy days. I got, I think, a half salary for that, so that was very good, and so financially it was very important. And one year, I don't know what year I did that, be 58, 59, 60, in through there. So so I did it partly for financial reasons, and partly because I enjoyed it. I like teaching, yeah. And it's not for everyone. But if you enjoy teaching, and I think it's something I got into. And then I got fired from Michigan. It was all in. What had happened is they asked me if I wanted to stay on, and I could get tenure. And I didn't even know what tenure meant. And I turned down, Wally Sanders was the had at that time, and I turned it down, and because I had my own firm. If it came, are you going to be a teacher or are you going to have your own firm? I'd rather have my own firm than teach. So Sanders took the position that you either teach full time or you don't. He didn't want to mix it up, and so I came down solidly on the side of having my own practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when did you begin your teaching at Lawrence Tech, and how did that happen?
Oh, when they told me I wasn't able to teach one course at Lawrence Tech, I was at some kind of meeting involving architects, and a guy named Greimel was there, and I saw him, and he asked me if I'd be interested in teaching at Lawrence Tech, and I said yes.
Immediately.
Immediately. It was a big pay cut, but I never taught. After a while, it wasn't primarily for money, just like I thought it was good job to do.
And so you taught here for what?
34 years, I think. Yeah.
And you just retired last year.
Yeah.
So I mean, a really long career.
Yes.
More than most full-time professors.
Yes.
What do you think are your most gratifying moments as a professor here?
Oh, I think towards the end of the semester, when all the projects become realized and you got some care and interest and results of a semester of teaching out of all this chaos. Mm-hmm. And that's a gratifying time. I enjoy that because they go through all the work of putting together their ideas, and it comes together. And when it comes together, not in all cases, but in most cases, something of some substance comes out of it. So I feel good about that.
Were there any benefits to your practice from teaching architecture? Did you find that working through concepts with the students actually made you a better designer? Because to teach it, you have to teach it and explain it, you have to know how to do it better.
Yeah, I think there might be something in that, but I think if you could very satisfactorily be a very, very good architect without teaching, and but I'm not so sure you could be a very, very good architect without having some formal education.
We've asked you to suggest a couple of projects that we could put on display in an exhibition that we're going to do associated with this Master Folio Series.
Mm-hmm.
And could you tell us a couple of aspects of the projects that you've submitted and what you think is important about those projects?
One project that we did that got a lot of attention was the one in Lafayette Park, and it was one of our first projects of any scale, large scale. And the way we got it was through a competition, and they proceeded to build it almost exactly the way we had designed it for the competition, and it got some national recognition. I like that because it's hard to get a project that gains some attention if it's got a lot of limitations in budget and things of that sort. But this got a lot of attention. So I like it for that purpose, for that reason. Also, right, we got a lot of commissions out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say from a aesthetic point of view, and also as from a business point of view, that was a very important project for us. Yeah.
Any other projects that you could
Oh yeah.
that you could cite as important?
The Tower Court Apartments on 14 in Crooks Road.
And what's the significance of that to you?
Oh, well, that was when you do these apartments, especially when they're only 3-story. You're very limited in what kind of things you can do architecturally, but you're not limited to what you can do with the landscape. And what we did was hollowed out the interior of the lot, made that 3 stories, and then on the outside it was 2 stories. And in that way we had like a 3-story, half 3-story and half 2-story, so that all the apartments had full light, and there weren't any apartments that are like half into the ground or anything of that sort. And then the architecture itself was simple but well proportioned. And so I think that was one of my favorite pieces of architecture. And then another one was my own house. And another one was, for the same client as I did the first one, some semicircular buildings on 7 Mile Road and Telegraph Road. I don't know, lots of buildings.
I was
By
very
the dozen.
intrigued when I saw the plans and drawings for your house. And what was your inspiration for that, for your own personal house?
Well, though it doesn't look it, it's very Miesian.
Mm-hmm.
It's based upon proportions, and where every opening is put into a wall, and it's up off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's in contrast to nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It uses all the trees that on the lot that frame the building. All the views from all the windows were important. It was expensive, more than the same ordinary house, but not a lot more. It used all wood vernacular, and it was all done that, which obviously Mies would never have done. And it just was. It used everyday construction methods, and the lowly builder was the responsible for developing over generations now the stick-built building, and it's genius how it goes together. And I think that I use that and made it furthered what you can do with the stick-built. So that was why I enjoyed it, building it. It didn't. It was like I would like a house. It didn't scream at you, but on the other hand, you can find the entry easily, and everything is easy to approach and easy to use, and my wife liked it too.
That's always important.
Yes, that's very important.
Is it easier designing a house for a client or designing a house for yourself?
Oh, much easier designing it for yourself.
And why would that be?
Well, you make decisions quicker,
Okay.
and you decide quicker in the sense that when you have three options, you can pick the one you want faster. Yeah.
Is it easier dealing with a client or dealing with your spouse in making decisions?
Oh, that's a good point. My spouse was very supportive and didn't mix in.
Okay.
She was very glad to have a house. We had a baby that house was built exactly 50 years ago, because his birthday was, it was 50 years ago.
Oh, well.
And we had another baby, a little older, and she just wanted a place to put everybody
Right.
and everything,
Right.
and she was quite happy.
Do you still live in the house today?
Yeah. I'm going to retire there. I have found no reason to move.
Very good. If you were giving an address, or let's say a graduation address to students today, graduates in architecture or design, what would be the most important thoughts that you would want to share with them?
It's interesting. It's because it's really what's in the students. It's what they're interested in. A lot of students have asked me, or people that say, do you think I could do architecture? And I ask a dumb question. I said, are you good in math? But that seems to have something to do with it. Because there's something about mathematics that is convivial with the whole idea of design. It's the systematic quality of math, the fact that it generates a proportion and scale, all those things are all part of being an architect. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if you enjoy history, I think that helps a lot, because history is where architecture comes from.
You know, I'm interested in your discussion of math, first of all. And your great mentor, arguably, was Eero Saarinen,
Yeah.
who you said was very logical, very rational in his approach to design. I mean, the way that you described it, he didn't get his design from inspiration, but it was a trial and error type of, almost a scientific investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Was that formative in your beliefs about the relationship between architecture and math, or architecture and logical decision making?
Well, what he did was to investigate. He would... There's a great story about how everybody turned down the Opera House in Sydney, Australia. And I was in the office at that time. And Cernan, who was in Sydney as one of the jurors, went back and said, well, after it had been turned down, he salvaged it, literally took it out of a waste paper basket and said, let's look at this one. And for better or for worse, it became an icon, one of the world's icon. of building, not only of an opera house. So I would say that I don't know what you would call that. He had an investigatory mind, I think, and to the extent that math is you search for a solution, it's the same sort of thing.
So to you, design is a very patient search. It's not some inspiration that comes to you and all of a sudden it's there and you draw it up and it's done. It's a very patient search and investigation.
Well, the first steps are that way, and then the rest of it. The first idea of it is 20% of it, and then the search is 80%. Yeah.
Very good. What do you think are the skills and habits that young architects need to have as they begin their careers?
Well, I mentioned it'd be good if they enjoy math or find it easy or not too difficult.
How important is drawing?
Drafting or freehand?
Drawing, freehand.
I don't know. I do freehand drawing, but I don't think it's. I do freehand drawing and then quickly go to. Well, in this day and age, you go to a computer.
Mm-hmm.
But in the initial stages, it's useful.
Can an architect practice today with little or no skills in freehand drawing? Let me phrase that a little bit better. Can an architect be a designer today without decent skills in freehand drawing?
I don't know. I think we gotta wait and see. We haven't done enough of it. I find in students, a lot of them revert to freehand drawing. It's just natural for them in the early stages, and then they increasingly use the computer after that. So I would say in the early stages, it is very valuable. And then later on, it becomes less valuable, less efficient, and gives you less knowledge than freehand. Yeah.
How important is it in architecture for young people to have I'd say a strong work ethic? And don't worry about the number of hours you're putting in, but it's for the experience. Is that important in this day and age? And how important was it to you?
Well, architects always work a lot. In the dorm, I remember they couldn't believe architects staying up all night drawing trees and things of that sort. And no, the work ethic goes with it, because a lot of what you do there's nothing you get paid for. It's seemingly effortless, but it's an important part of the job, this drawing and sketching, and it has to be done. So I would think it is significant, but there's no reason why in theory you can't do a job with just off of rudimentary drawings that are freehand and work it into computer-driven. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's just very fine.
Yeah.
Before we close, is there... you've been associated with Lawrence Technological University and students and faculty for a long time, and have been a very important part of the faculty. Is there anything that you would like to say in closing about your experiences at Lawrence Tech, or your feelings about the future of the school and architectural education?
Well, when I joined it with Carl, it was Carl Grimal. It was in a kind of sorry state. I think they weren't administratively up to stuff, and there was a lot of weaknesses in that part of it. But then it started getting better, and then there's some deans that did well, and some deans that didn't seem to do much. But the overall tendency was for LTU to gain strength, to improve, and now it's, I think, administratively, it's stronger than I've ever seen it. The things seem to be smooth and orderly, and it's something that is bound to happen, or should have happened even long ago. The aim still seems to be to have teachers that who have been out in the field and can teach students. And you have a little bit of when you talk to a student and say, well, this is the way it was done, or you could do it this way, or I've had experience doing something, that's a lot more valuable than somebody who's just purely an academic. Mm-hmm. So which is my experience. So I might be trying to just feather my own cap, but I think that people that have a firm grasp of what architecture is about in the practical field makes, to some extent, a much better teacher. So that's what has been going on, and since then, I think it's continued. And in the last few years, the growth of LTU has been really remarkable, and also deserved. I think the student body is, I think, better than I've ever remembered in terms of quality. A lot of it might be outside influences that just channel more people in, but LTU is ready to take them. So you don't know which comes first, but LTU isn't ruining the situation. It's people ask me about their darling children. Are they safe at LTU getting an education? And I assure them that they're safe at LTU getting a very good education. So that sums it up. I think and also all the physical improvements help a lot. And having separate studios and all those things that make it for a much better institution than when I first came in.
Very good. Well, I think on this positive note, we can end, and I really thank you, Professor Joe Savin, for participating in the Master Folio Series. Mm-hmm. And as you move along in your career, and I think you're still practicing, mm-hmm. we wish you good luck, and we hope that you don't make yourself so scarce around here.
I promise not to.
Thank you so much.
Okay.